Hello, traveller, and welcome back to Tales of the Embers. I'm the story keeper, keeper of forgotten legends, distant worlds, and the stories that time almost left behind. Tonight, we'll leave the worries of the day behind us and journey somewhere new. Perhaps to an ancient battlefield beneath the stars. Perhaps to a forgotten kingdom beyond the sea. Or perhaps to a world that exists only in myth and memory. So find a comfortable place to rest. Pull up your blanket. Close your eyes if you'd like, and let the fire crackle softly in the background. The road ahead is long. The night is quiet, and another story awaits. This is Tales of the Embers. Now, let us begin. Tonight's story takes us to a lonely mountain road. A road forgotten by most maps. A road avoided by locals after sunset. A road where travellers have occasionally reported seeing something impossible. A warm inn, a glowing fire, a place of safety in the middle of a winter storm. The strange thing is this: no one can ever find it again. Some claim it is a ghost story. Others insist it is merely a legend. Yet every few years, another traveller tells the same tale. A snowstorm, a lonely road, a welcoming inn, and an innkeeper who somehow knows their name before they speak it. So settle in, get comfortable, and let us begin. The snow had been falling for hours. Thomas Whitaker pulled his coat tighter as he guided his horse along the narrow mountain road. The wind howled through the trees. Snow swirled across the path. Visibility had shrunk to only a few yards. The lantern hanging from his saddle cast a weak yellow glow that barely pierced the storm. Thomas had travelled these mountains before. Many times. He knew the route, or at least he thought he did. Now he wasn't so sure. The road seemed unfamiliar. The storm had erased every landmark. Every bend looked identical. Every stretch of forest appeared the same. The sun had vanished long ago. Darkness had settled over the mountains, and the temperature continued dropping. Thomas glanced toward the sky. Nothing. Only snow. Endless snow. He checked his pocket watch. Nearly midnight. Too late to continue. Too dangerous to stop. He was trapped between bad choices. The horse snorted nervously. Thomas reached forward and patted its neck. Easy now. The animal's ears twitched. It stared ahead into the storm, then stopped, refused to move. Thomas frowned. The horse had never behaved this way before. He tugged gently on the reins. Nothing. The horse stood frozen, watching, listening. Thomas followed its gaze. At first he saw only darkness, then a light, faint, distant, golden. The glow flickered through the snow. A lantern, perhaps. Or a window. His heart lifted immediately. Civilization, shelter, warmth. The horse remained uneasy. Yet Thomas felt only relief. The light grew brighter as they approached. Another light appeared, then another, and another. Gradually, the shape emerged from the storm, a large building, 3 stories tall, warm yellow windows, stone chimney, smoke rising into the night. An inn. Thomas stared, confused. He had travelled this road for years. There was no inn here. There never had been. Yet there it stood, warm and welcoming, as if it had always existed. A wooden sign swung gently above the entrance. The snow obscured most of the lettering. Only a few words remained visible. The last stop. A strange name. But Thomas was in no position to question good fortune. The horse reluctantly followed him toward the stable. The closer they approached, the more uneasy the animal became. Its breathing quickened, its muscles tensed. Thomas found the behavior odd, yet exhaustion quickly pushed the concern aside. All he wanted was warmth. The inn felt wonderful. The moment he stepped inside, heat washed over him. A massive fireplace dominated the main room. Flames danced across thick logs. The scent of stew filled the air. Candles illuminated polished wood tables. Soft music drifted from somewhere deeper within the building. The atmosphere felt impossibly comfortable, like stepping into another world. The storm vanished. The cold disappeared. For the first time all day, Thomas relaxed. Several guests occupied the room. A woman reading near the fire. An elderly gentleman enjoying tea. 2 travellers quietly playing cards. Nothing unusual, nothing alarming. Just ordinary people escaping winter weather. Yet something felt odd. Thomas couldn't immediately identify it. Only a vague sense that things weren't quite right. Then the innkeeper appeared. A tall man with silver hair. Perhaps 60 years old, impeccably dressed. Kind eyes. Calm smile. The innkeeper approached. And before Thomas could speak, the man nodded politely. Good evening, Mr. Whitaker. Thomas blinked. Have we met? The innkeeper smiled. No. The answer arrived so casually it almost sounded normal. Almost. Thomas frowned. Then, how do you know my name? The innkeeper simply gestured toward the fire. Please sit. You must be freezing. The question remained unanswered. Odd, yet strangely difficult to press. The warmth, the smell of food, the exhaustion, all of it made confrontation feel unnecessary. Thomas reluctantly allowed the matter to drop. For the moment, dinner was excellent. Far better than anything he expected to find in the mountains. Fresh bread, stew, roasted vegetables, even warm apple pie. The quality made no sense. Supply wagons rarely travelled these roads, certainly not during winter. Yet the inn appeared fully stocked. The guests seemed equally content. Nobody appeared worried. Nobody seemed eager to leave. The atmosphere felt timeless, comfortable, safe. Almost too safe. As the evening progressed, Thomas began noticing strange details. Small details, easy to miss. The elderly gentleman near the fireplace spoke of President Lincoln as if discussing a recent election. One woman wore clothing decades out of fashion. Another guest carried a pocket watch engraved with a date from nearly 70 years earlier. At first, Thomas assumed coincidence. Then the oddities continued. A man mentioned crossing the mountains in 1888. Another discussed a flood from 1843. The years made no sense. Some guests should have been old. Others should have been dead. Yet everyone appeared perfectly normal. Perfectly healthy. Thomas listened carefully. The unease returned, growing stronger. The innkeeper seemed aware of it. Every time Thomas glanced toward him, the silver-haired man was already watching. Always smiling, always calm, as though waiting for something. Later that night, Thomas retired to his room. The accommodations were exceptional. Clean sheets, warm blankets, a fire burning in the hearth. Luxury beyond reason. Yet sleep refused to come. Something about the inn bothered him. Something he couldn't explain. Finally, he rose from bed. The hallway beyond lay silent. Moonlight spilled through narrow windows. The storm had ended. Curiosity pulled him downstairs. The common room stood empty. The fireplace still burned. No guests, no innkeeper, only silence. Thomas crossed the room slowly, then stopped. A large ledger rested atop the front desk. Its leather cover appeared ancient. The pages yellowed with age. Without thinking, Thomas opened it. Guest records, names, dates, hundreds of entries, perhaps thousands. The earliest stretched back centuries. Thomas turned pages carefully, reading, studying. Then he froze. A familiar name appeared. His grandfather. Thomas stared. Impossible! His grandfather had died before Thomas was born. Yet there it was, signed in elegant handwriting. A date accompanied the entry. December the 17th. Thomas turned more pages. The blood drained from his face. More names. Family members. Friends. People long dead. All listed as guests. All recorded as having stayed at the inn. The realization hit like ice water. This wasn't a coincidence. This wasn't normal. Something was terribly wrong. A floorboard creaked behind him. Thomas spun around. The innkeeper stood there, silent, watching. The smile remained. Yet somehow it no longer felt welcoming. Interesting reading? The innkeeper asked softly. Thomas closed the ledger. His heart pounded. What is this place? The innkeeper looked toward the fire. For the first time, sadness appeared in his eyes. A place for travellers. Thomas shook his head. No. His voice trembled. What is this place really? The innkeeper remained silent for several moments. Then he answered, "A place between journeys." The words offered no comfort, only deeper mystery. Outside the window, snow began falling once again, and somewhere beyond the warmth of the inn, something moved through the darkness. Something approaching. Something that caused even the innkeeper to look concerned. The innkeeper stood motionless beside the desk. The fire crackled softly. Snow drifted beyond the windows. For several long moments, neither man spoke. Thomas could hear only his own heartbeat. "A place between journeys?" he finally asked. The innkeeper nodded. Yes. The answer did little to ease his mind. Thomas gestured toward the ledger. "My grandfather died 30 years ago." The innkeeper's expression softened. "I know." The simple response sent a chill down Thomas's spine. The room suddenly felt colder, not physically, emotionally, as though he stood at the edge of something vast and impossible. "What is this place?" The innkeeper looked toward the fire. His eyes reflected the flames. "When travelers become lost," he paused. "Truly lost." His gaze drifted toward the snow-covered windows. "Sometimes they find us." Thomas swallowed. "I don't understand." The innkeeper smiled sadly. "Very few do." A distant sound echoed outside. A low howl. Not wind, something else. The innkeeper immediately turned toward the door. For the first time all evening, concern appeared on his face. The howl came again. Closer. The guests began emerging from their rooms. One by one, the woman with the book, the elderly gentleman, the card players. All gathered silently in the common room. Nobody looked surprised, only worried. Thomas noticed something then. Something he had somehow missed before. Every guest appeared familiar. Not personally familiar, but familiar in another way. Their clothing, their speech, their mannerisms, different eras, different decades, different centuries, yet all shared one thing. They looked like people who had been traveling when something happened. A storm, a flood, a shipwreck, an accident, a final journey. The realization slowly settled into place, and Thomas found himself afraid to voice it. The howl echoed again, much closer now. The windows rattled. The fire dimmed momentarily. The guests exchanged nervous glances. "What is that?" Thomas asked. The innkeeper's eyes remained fixed on the front door. "The reason this place exists." The answer made no sense. Yet somehow it felt important. Outside, movement appeared beyond the frosted glass. Shadows. Large shadows moving through the snowstorm. Thomas felt his stomach tighten. The innkeeper walked toward the fireplace, reached above the mantel, and removed an ancient lantern. Its glass glowed with pale silver light. Not firelight, something else. Something older. The guests immediately relaxed upon seeing it. The innkeeper turned toward Thomas. "You should return to your room." Thomas shook his head. No. The response surprised even him. The innkeeper studied him for a moment, then nodded. "Very well." The front door shook violently. A heavy impact struck the wood. Several guests flinched. Another impact followed. Then another. Whatever stood outside was trying to enter. Thomas gripped the edge of a table. The entire inn seemed to hold its breath. The silver lantern brightened. The strange glow spread across the room. The impact stopped immediately. Silence followed, then footsteps. Circling the building. Slowly, patiently. Thomas watched shadows pass beyond the windows. Huge shadows, far too large to belong to people. "What are they?" he whispered. The innkeeper lowered his voice. "They are the lost." The words carried enormous weight. "The lost?" The old man nodded. Souls who never accepted their journey's end. The room grew quiet, painfully quiet. The guests lowered their heads. Some closed their eyes. Others stared into the fire. The innkeeper continued. "They wander storms. They wander darkness. They search endlessly for roads that no longer exist." Thomas looked toward the windows. The shadows continued moving. Watching, waiting. And the inn. The innkeeper smiled faintly. The inn gives travelers a place to rest. A realization slowly formed. Not an inn. Not really. A refuge. A shelter. A final resting place for those caught between worlds. The thought should have frightened him. Instead, it filled him with sadness. Because suddenly everything made sense. The guests. The ledger. The impossible dates. The familiar names. The peace he had felt since arriving. The inn was not haunted. It was a sanctuary. Hours passed. The lost remained outside, circling, watching. The guests gathered near the fireplace. Stories filled the room. One by one they spoke. Not of death, but of life. A sailor described crossing the Atlantic. A schoolteacher spoke of children she once taught. A farmer remembered harvest seasons long gone. An old soldier recalled marching home after a distant war. The stories felt warm, human, beautiful. Thomas listened quietly. Gradually he realized something. Nobody here spoke with regret. Nobody seemed angry. Only peaceful, as though they had accepted something he still struggled to understand. The innkeeper eventually sat beside him. For a while neither spoke. Then Thomas asked the question that had lingered since arriving. "Why am I here?" The innkeeper smiled. because you were lost. Thomas frowned. I'm alive. Yes. The innkeeper nodded. And that's what makes your visit unusual. Thomas stared. The old man chuckled softly. Most guests arrive at the end of their journey. The statement hung in the air. Thomas felt a chill. And me? The innkeeper looked toward the window. The storm brought you here. Outside, snow continued falling. But your road isn't finished. The words stayed with him. Your road isn't finished. Thomas thought about his life. The people waiting for him. The places he still hoped to see. The unfinished promises. The simple moments he had taken for granted. Perhaps that was the purpose of the inn. Not death. Perspective. A reminder. A chance to pause between chapters. The realization felt strangely comforting. Near dawn, the storm finally began to weaken. The shadows outside faded. The lost disappeared into the mountains. The guests returned to their rooms. The silver lantern dimmed. The innkeeper stood near the front door. Waiting. Thomas approached slowly. The old man smiled. The road is open again. Thomas glanced toward the windows. Morning light touched the snow. For the first time in hours, the mountains seemed ordinary. Normal. Real. Part of him wanted to stay. The thought surprised him. The inn felt safe, peaceful, warm. Yet he understood now. That wasn't the point. The point was continuing, moving forward, living. The innkeeper opened the door. Cold mountain air drifted inside. Thomas stepped toward the threshold, then paused. One final question remained. Will I ever find this place again? The old man smiled. The same gentle smile Thomas had seen upon arrival. Only if you truly need it. Outside, the world looked transformed. The storm had vanished. Blue sky stretched above snow-covered peaks. Sunlight sparkled across untouched drifts. Thomas turned back toward the inn, wanting one last look, one last memory. But the building was gone. The clearing stood empty. No inn, no stable, no chimney. Nothing. Only snow. The mountain road stretched silently into the distance. Thomas stood, frozen, trying to understand, trying to explain what he had experienced. Eventually, he stopped trying. Some places were not meant to be understood. Only remembered. Years passed. Thomas never found the inn again. He searched. Many times, yet every attempt failed. The road remained empty. The mountains revealed nothing. Life continued. Children grew. Friends aged. Seasons changed. And still the memory remained. A warm fire. A silver lantern. a ledger filled with impossible names, and an innkeeper who knew his name before he spoke it. Then, one winter evening, many years later, Thomas sat beside his own fireplace. Snow drifted outside. The wind whispered through the trees. The old man smiled softly, because for the first time he understood. The inn was not waiting at the end of a road. It was waiting at the edge of fear, the edge of uncertainty, the edge of journeys. A place where travelers could rest when the world became too dark. A place where no one truly arrived by accident. And somewhere beyond the mountains, beyond the storms, beyond the roads shown on any map, the last stop still waited, its windows glowing warmly through the snow, its fire burning brightly, its innkeeper watching the road, ready for the next traveler, ready for the next story, the end, before you go. If you enjoyed tonight's journey, I'd be honored if you subscribed and joined us for future adventures. New stories arrive regularly here at Tales of the Embers, where heroes walk forgotten roads, ancient mysteries wait beyond the horizon, and every ember carries the spark of a new story. If there's a legend, myth, or adventure you'd like to hear next, feel free to leave a comment below. Until our paths cross again, rest well, sleep peacefully, and may your dreams carry you safely among the stars. Good night, traveler.